Hey guys, it's Leah. If you follow me on social media, then you know that I am making a tarot card deck. I'm making a full 78 card tarot deck, and it is largely inspired by the original Rider-Waite deck. This is actually my second video that I'm publishing on YouTube, and so I was hoping to talk a little bit about the Magician card in this video, which is the second card that I created so far. So I was thinking to first show you guys the original card and some of the symbolism that we see in that card, the imagery and the colors, before I show you my process for making my card and how I sort of reimagined the original Magician card. So let's get into it. So here is the original Rider-Waite Magician card. We can see lots of yellow, and we have a magician here wearing a red cloak and a white shirt underneath. He is pointing up with a wand in his, I guess that would be his right hand, a wand in his right hand, and he's pointing down to the ground with his left hand. A big phrase for this card is "as above, so below." So he's essentially pulling energy down from the universe with one hand and sort of indicating that he's sort of pulling it down with his other hand. And I think that's also reflected in the roses that we see on either end of the composition. So we have sort of like an arch of roses up here, and then roses and lilies down at the bottom. That means that he sort of is pulling energy down from the universe, and he's creating something new or slightly different with that energy that he's able to harness. You'll also notice that there is a infinity symbol above his head, and that symbolizes this sort of like influx, constant, steady stream of energy, that life occurs in all cycles, you know, the life, death, rebirth cycle. I think it has a lot to do with energy. This card has a lot to do with like using energy that's all around us to manifest or create our desires. That's also definitely repeated here. That's that general message. We can see a couple of things laid upon the table here. We have the cups, the pentacles, swords, and the wand. So those are, if you don't know tarot, these things are very commonly repeated throughout the suits of the minor arcana in the Rider-Waite tarot deck. And so each one of them symbolizes a different element. So your cups symbolize water, which symbolize like emotions and intuition. The pentacles symbolize earth and like more earthly things, so like your body, physical manifestations, your belongings, money. The sword symbolizes the element air, and air is sort of like for our intellect, our thoughts, the way we sort of problem solve and think. And lastly, the wands symbolizes the element fire, which is all about like passion, willpower, sort of energy, maybe the processes that we use to complete tasks, which like require energy. So yeah, that's kind of like the gist of those, which I'll definitely get into in a later video at some point, hopefully, but that's kind of what all of those little elements on that table mean. You'll also notice that there are some symbols inscribed upon the table as well, which is pretty cool. Another thing I wanted to mention is that the magician is wearing a red cloak. We see a lot of red, white, and yellow in this card. I believe that the red symbolizes, you know, like passion, energy, willpower. You know, it's very much a color that's also associated with wands or the fire element. And so I think this card very much has a lot to do with, you know, having the willpower and the energy to create one's desires. The main takeaway that I get from the Magician card is this idea of harnessing energy from the universe and using that energy in a way that we're able to manifest our desires here on this earthly plane. I think it's very much a card about creation and willpower, manifestation, initiation. So let's jump into my reimagination of my tarot card, which includes an 8-legged creature. All right, so now we get to jump into the fun part, which is reimagining the magician card. So if you didn't know this already, I am illustrating each card as a different animal. So I'm sort of reimagining what each card would look like if it were represented by a different animal. So as you can see here, I am starting to sketch out a composition with a spider. I definitely think that the spider is the perfect magician for several reasons. I think they're pretty awesome. The fact that they walk on 8 legs is like, that's magical in of itself. But also, just going back to the idea of this ability to sort of bring energy down from the universe and projecting it and manifesting it onto the earthly plane is an idea that I was really thinking about when I made this card. And I think spiders are the perfect representation of that because they make these awesome webs that look a lot like the universe itself, or they sort of resemble the universe itself with their spiral patterns and their sort of delicate, very intricate detailing. I think they're just amazing. If you've ever studied a spider web up close or watched a spider build a web, it's really fascinating. Of course, I wanted the spider to be sort of in this sort of gnarly hole in a tree or in a like a fallen log that's maybe been sort of eroded by water. So you can see me using this reference quite a bit here to sort of um, get a good feel for the shadows and the depth that I'm trying to create here. I definitely want to sort of conjure this feeling that the spider is like got this void or this deep blackness of darkness behind him, and he's sort of manifesting this web out of pure blackness, and that this web is eventually going to help him catch all his juicy little bugs that he's going to be able to eat and sustain himself off of. So I thought that was a really fun sort of idea to explore here. In the original Rider-Waite deck, you can also see some carvings in the wood, which I think I mentioned earlier. And so that was a great opportunity for me to include the sigil, which you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the wood. And so this is something that I actually didn't talk about in the first video, but I am putting a sigil into each card within the major arcana. And so each sigil I've crafted, and each sigil has its very own special meaning, which is going to be incorporated into the reference book that's going to be included with the final deck. I might do a video at some point about sigil making and how I created unique sigils for each card at some point, if that's something you guys are interested in. But for now, I'm going to keep the sigils a little bit of a secret. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, definitely stay tuned because I would love to talk about that, and I would love to include that information in the book once the deck is available. Another thing that I thought was really cool to think about, and it was an element that I really wanted to bring through from the original Magician card, which was the infinity symbol. And what's cool about the infinity symbol is if you turn it over on its side, it becomes a figure 8. And it's really cool that spiders happen to have 8 legs. So I thought that kind of, to me, that little moment or that realization for me really sort of solidified the fact that I just had to draw a spider for this card. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, I went ahead and I included a figure 8 symbol on the spider's
thorax, abdomen, his big booty. So for this particular card, I was definitely interested in obviously having a spider web, but I also wanted to carry through some other elements that we do see in the original Rider-Waite card. One of those obviously being the roses, which you can see are sort of roughly fleshed out here. I definitely wanted them to be red roses because, again, going back to that color red, I definitely see it as a color of like passion, willpower, hot, intense energy that's required to sort of initiate tasks. So that's why I have the red roses at the bottom of the composition, as well as the spider is kind of like this warm orangish color as well. Here I am detailing the roses a little bit more. These were a lot of fun to draw. I'm actually a few cards in from this card in real time, and it's really been a lot of fun to draw all the different foliage and to come up with what type of flowers I want to include for each card. I actually didn't really plan this, but one thing that I was surprised by when the composition was finished was this mirroring of the original Rider-Waite deck in terms of the composition. So I did, of course, intentionally include roses on the bottom of the composition. And that was really the only place that I ever intended to put them. And then, of course, we have the gnarly wood sort of like creating this archway above the spider. I didn't actually realize how much that closely mirrored the archway that we see in the original Rider-Waite deck. So that was actually really exciting for me to actually sort of set them side by side to sort of see how they really actually closely mirrored each other in terms of composition, which I thought was a lot of fun. I was also trying to mirror or mimic the magician's stance or pose in the original card, you know, where he's pointing upwards with one arm and then pointing downwards with the other arm. So I kind of did that a little bit with his legs. I wanted it to be subtle. I wanted it to sort of hint at what we see in the original card without being too, animated and cartoonish. So here is the final magician card. I really love how this one turned out. It has one of my favorite color schemes. I love the texture of wood grain, especially wood grain that's like really gnarly and really old. And spiders, even though sometimes they definitely creep me out a little bit, are probably one of my favorite creatures on this earth just because they're so unique. They're so magical. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to talk to you guys later. See ya!